In the dimly lit basement of St. Agnes Medical Center, Dr. Victor Hastings stood over the operating table, surrounded by an eerie silence. The air was heavy with anticipation as he prepared to perform the world's first head transplant. The medical community was skeptical, but Dr. Hastings was driven by a relentless desire to push the boundaries of science. The patient, Mr. James Harlan, lay unconscious, his body carefully prepped for the groundbreaking procedure. The surgical team, handpicked by Dr. Hastings, exchanged nervous glances as they readied themselves for the historic operation. The room echoed with the hum of machinery, and the soft glow of monitors cast an otherworldly light on the surgical tools. Dr. Hastings, known for his brilliant mind but eccentric methods, couldn't suppress the excitement coursing through his veins. As the anesthesia took hold, Mr. Harlan's body lay still, a mere vessel for the ambitious experiment. Dr. Hastings meticulously attached electrodes and tubes, connecting the intricate web of nerves and blood vessels between the donor body and Mr. Harlan's severed head. The atmosphere grew more tense with every precise movement of the scalpel. As the clock ticked away, a palpable unease filled the room. It was as if the very air had thickened, suffocating the hopes of those involved. A hushed whisper passed among the medical team, a shared anxiety that this scientific leap might be too bold, too audacious. Suddenly, a jolt of electricity surged through the room. The monitors flickered, casting ominous shadows on the walls. Dr. Hastings, undeterred, pressed on, determined to see his vision come to life. The head of Mr. Harlan was delicately lowered onto the new body, and the team held their breath. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, Mr. Harlan's eyes flickered open. A collective gasp filled the room, quickly replaced by cheers of triumph. Dr. Hastings stood back, a mixture of pride and disbelief etched across his face. However, the elation was short-lived. As Mr. Harlan regained consciousness, an unsettling realization dawned upon the medical team. His eyes, once filled with life and vitality, now betrayed a profound emptiness. The head transplant had been a success, technically speaking, but something had gone horribly wrong. As Mr. Harlan sat up, his gaze met the horrified eyes of the medical team. His once muted voice now echoed through the room, a haunting combination of his own and an unfamiliar, malevolent tone. It became clear that the transplantation had not only transferred the physical aspects of Mr. Harlan, but also an unwelcome entity that lurked within the depths of the donor's consciousness. The room descended into chaos as Mr. Harlan, now a vessel for an otherworldly force, rose from the operating table. The medical team, paralyzed with fear, watched helplessly as the entity revealed its true nature, a malevolent force that had been dormant, waiting for an opportunity to manifest in the world. The basement, once a haven of scientific innovation, transformed into a nightmarish battleground between the living and the supernatural. Dr. Hastings, haunted by the consequences of his ambitious experiment, found himself trapped in a macabre dance with the very darkness he had unleashed. And so, as the screams of the possessed Mr. Harlan echoed through the dimly lit halls, the world recoiled in horror at the unintended consequences of tampering with the boundaries between life and death. Dr. Hastings, now gripped by guilt and terror, desperately searched for a way to contain the malevolent force that had infiltrated Mr. Harlan's body. The once celebrated surgeon was now faced with the consequences of playing with forces beyond human understanding. The possessed Mr. Harlan moved with an unnatural grace, his every step sending shivers down the spines of those who dared to witness the unholy amalgamation. The entity spoke through him, a chilling voice that seemed to resonate from the depths of the netherworld, promising doom and despair. As chaos unfolded, the medical team, now fragmented and terrified, attempted to flee the basement. The possessed Mr. Harlan, however, moved with an uncanny speed, thwarting every attempt at escape. The once sterile and ordered environment became a nightmarish labyrinth, with the walls seemingly closing in on the fleeing individuals. Dr. Hastings, realizing the gravity of his mistake, retreated to his office within the medical center. He feverishly searched through dusty tomes and ancient texts, desperately seeking a solution to exorcise the malevolent force that now controlled Mr. Harlan. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on his shoulders, and the once determined scientist now bore the burden of undoing the horrors he had unleashed. Meanwhile, the possessed Mr. Harlan continued his malevolent rampage, leaving a trail of twisted bodies and shattered hopes in his wake. The entity reveled in the suffering it caused, feeding off the fear and despair of those unfortunate enough to cross its path. As Dr. Hastings delved into arcane rituals and incantations, a chilling realization struck him. The malevolent force was not simply a random entity, it was a vengeful spirit tied to the donor's past. The donor, A tormented soul with a dark history had left behind a legacy of pain and suffering that now sought to manifest itself through Mr. Harlan's body. Driven by a newfound determination, Dr. Hastings concocted a plan to confront the entity head-on. Armed with ancient artifacts and the knowledge gleaned from forbidden texts, he descended once again into the nightmarish depths of the medical center. The final confrontation unfolded in the basement, where the possessed Mr. Harlan stood surrounded by the remnants of the shattered medical team. Dr. Hastings, armed with a relic of ancient power, faced the entity with a mix of trepidation and resolve. As the artifact's incantations echoed through the air, a blinding light engulfed the room. The possessed Mr. Harlan writhed in agony, the malevolent force resisting its expulsion. The struggle between the ancient power and the vengeful spirit raged on, the very fabric of reality warping under the strain. In a final, desperate surge of energy, the artifact's power overwhelmed the entity, banishing it back to the shadows from whence it came. The possessed Mr. Harlan collapsed to the ground, his body lifeless once again. The basement fell silent, the remnants of the medical team emerging from their hiding places to witness the aftermath. Dr. Hastings, drained and haunted by the horrors he had witnessed, stared at the inert form of Mr. Harlan, contemplating the cost of playing with the boundaries of life and death. The world, forever scarred by the events that unfolded in the bowels of St. Agnes Medical Center, learned a harsh lesson about the consequences of tampering with the unknown. Dr. Hastings, burdened by the weight of his ambitions, retreated into obscurity, haunted by the ghost of a failed experiment that had unleashed a darkness beyond comprehension. In the aftermath of the nightmarish events at St. Agnes Medical Center, a heavy air of solemnity descended upon the scientific community. The failed experiment became a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the dangers lurking in the uncharted territories of medical science. Dr. Hastings, once a pioneer, now lived in seclusion, haunted by guilt and the ghosts of his ambition. The medical community, while condemning the reckless experiment, couldn't deny the valuable lessons it had provided. Ethical committees were established to scrutinize and regulate the boundaries of scientific exploration, ensuring that such dark paths would not be tread upon again. The possessed Mr. Harlan's body, now devoid of the malevolent force, was laid to rest in an unmarked grave, a silent reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded. The medical team survivors, scarred both mentally and physically, sought solace in therapy and support groups, grappling with the trauma they had endured. Rumors circulated among the locals, turning the basement of St. Agnes Medical Center into a place shrouded in mystery and fear. It became an urban legend, a cautionary tale parents would tell their children to keep them from venturing into the forbidden depths of the abandoned medical facility. Years passed, and the memory of the failed head transplant operation began to fade. Dr. Hastings, still haunted by his past, found a glimmer of redemption in sharing his cautionary tale with aspiring scientists. He lectured at universities, emphasizing the importance of ethical conduct in scientific pursuits and the consequences of unchecked ambition. However, the malevolent force that had been banished from Mr. Harlan's body lingered in the shadows, biding its time. As the years rolled on, whispers of strange occurrences and unexplained phenomena surfaced in the vicinity of St. Agnes Medical Center. Some claimed to have heard eerie whispers echoing through the deserted halls, while others reported inexplicable sightings. One stormy night, the atmosphere around the abandoned medical center crackled with an otherworldly energy. A shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, a silhouette that bore an uncanny resemblance to Mr. Harlan. The malevolent force, having waited patiently, sought a new vessel to continue its dark quest for revenge. The legend of St. Agnes Medical Center lived on, its dark secrets hidden in the corridors of the past, waiting for the day when the malevolent force would rise again. The world, scarred by the consequences of scientific hubris, remained vigilant, forever wary of the shadows that lurked in the pursuit of forbidden knowledge.
Like, subscribe, and click on notifications that will allow you to stay up to date with the news and not miss videos from the channel, where there will be many more horror stories.